Picture this. You're standing on the bank of a shallow river somewhere in what will eventually become Ohio. It's around 10,000 BC. The trees are massive. The air is thick with moisture. The water in front of you is moving slow and dark. And then you see it. Something is swimming toward the bank. At first you think it's a log. Then the log moves its head. Then you see the tail. Flat, wide, unmistakable. It hauls itself out of the water. You finally get a full look at the thing standing between you and the tree line. It's a beaver. Except calling it a beaver feels like calling a great white shark a fish. Technically accurate, completely missing the point. Castoroides ohioensis was real. It lived across North America for millions of years, from Florida up through the Great Lakes, from the East Coast all the way into the Pacific Northwest. At its peak, it weighed somewhere between 130 and 220 pounds. Some estimates push higher. It stood roughly 4 feet tall at the shoulder and stretched over 6 feet from nose to tail. To put that in terms that actually land, this was the size of a black bear. Built like a barrel, teeth like railroad spikes up to 6 inches long, curved and thick and orange from the iron compounds in the enamel. It was the largest rodent ever to walk North America. And for a stretch of tens of thousands of years, it shared this continent with us. Here's the part that stops people. This isn't mythology. This isn't a creature reconstructed from a single tooth and a lot of imagination. We have hundreds of fossils, skulls, limb bones, partial skeletons, pulled out of peat bogs and river sediment from dozens of states. The Smithsonian has one. The Field Museum in Chicago has one. This animal was everywhere, thriving across a continent that was still being shaped by glaciers, warming slowly into the world we recognize today, and somewhere in that world, early humans were moving. The first people to reach North America, crossing during the glacial period when sea levels were low enough to expose a land bridge across what is now the Bering Strait, were spreading south and east through exactly the territory where Castoroides lived. They were hunting mammoths, fishing rivers, learning a continent that had never seen a human footprint before. And at some point, someone came around a bend in a river and saw one of these things for the first time. What happened next is where the story gets genuinely strange. The obvious assumption is that ancient humans hunted Castoroides. That's the narrative that writes itself. Big animal, hungry people, stone-tipped spears. We know these same populations were taking down woolly mammoths and mastodons, creatures that make a giant beaver look manageable by comparison. So logically, Castoroides should show up all over the archaeological record as prey. Butchered bones, kill sites, the whole picture, except it doesn't. In the entire body of North American archaeology, there is not a single confirmed kill site where humans demonstrably hunted Castoroides. No butchered bones with cut marks, no giant beaver remains in a cooking pit, no spear points embedded in fossilized hide. For an animal this large, this widespread, and this contemporaneous with early human populations, the silence in the record is genuinely strange. Strange enough that researchers have been arguing about what it means for decades. One possibility is straightforward and a little humbling. We just haven't found it yet. The overlap period between humans and Castoroides in North America is relatively narrow, maybe a few thousand years, and the fossil record for that window is patchy at best. Organic material disappears, sites get buried, eroded, flooded. The absence of evidence, as any archaeologist will tell you, is not the same as evidence of absence, but there's another possibility that's far more interesting. Maybe humans didn't hunt them much because hunting a giant beaver was genuinely a terrible idea. Think about the logistics. Castoroides almost certainly spent most of its time in or near water. It was built for wetland environments, slow rivers, shallow lakes, marshy terrain. That's its home turf, not yours. A 200-pound animal that can disappear underwater the moment it senses a threat is a difficult target for hunters working with spears on a riverbank. The risk-to-reward calculation may have simply been bad. Mammoths were huge, but they moved on open ground. A giant beaver in chest-deep water is a different problem entirely. There's also the question of behavior. Modern beavers are not aggressive animals. They are engineers. They build, they dam, they reshape the water around them. Castoroides, based on its anatomy, was likely doing something similar at a much larger scale, which means early humans may have encountered this animal not as a threat, not even primarily as prey, but as a presence, a fact of the landscape. something that altered the rivers and wetlands that humans depended on for water, for fish, for travel routes. Not an enemy, not quite food. Something stranger than either. A neighbor. Castoroides vanished approximately 10,000 years ago, not gradually, not over millions of years. Most species drift toward extinction slowly. It disappeared inside a window, in geological terms, a single exhale. And it was not alone. The same period saw a collapse. An entire world collapsed. Woolly mammoths, mastodons, short-faced bears, saber-toothed cats, American horses, American camels. The giant ground sloth, 35 genera of large mammals gone. From North America in Pleistocene, megafaunal extinction. The continent looked like modern Africa, dense with enormous animals. 2 looking the way it does today. In what amounts to an eye blink. 2 suspects, climate and humans. The argument has run over 50 years, without a clean resolution. The climate case is real and serious. The end of the last glacial maximum brought dramatic environmental shifts across North America. Temperatures rose, ice sheets retreated, forests expanded into open grasslands. Wetlands dried up or moved, ecosystems megafauna adapted to were restructuring. Faster than evolution could answer. For Castoroides, dependent on wetlands, a shift in hydrology is not small. Its habitat wasn't just changing, in many regions it was disappearing entirely. But the climate argument runs into trouble. North America had been through glacial cycles before. Multiple times, temperatures rose and fell dramatically. Across hundreds of thousands of years, Castoroides survived every single one. It made it through previous warming periods, comparable to what happened 10,000 years ago. So why not this one? The variable that was different this time was us. The overkill hypothesis was proposed by Paul Martin. In the 1960s, still actively debated today, human hunters arrived in North America. They encountered megafauna never seeing humans before. These animals had no evolved fear response to a 2-legged predator carrying weapons. They didn't flee. They didn't recognize the threat. A skilled hunting culture moved through the continent, full of large, naive, calorie-rich animals. They could have driven populations to collapse. Faster than the fossil record shows. The honest answer is probably both. Climate stress weakened populations, compressed habitat, human pressure hit struggling species. Together they finished the job. Neither might have completed alone. The first humans to reach North America may have participated in the largest extinction event since the dinosaurs, not out of malice, out of hunger, and because they were extraordinarily good hunters. Here's something worth sitting with for a moment. Every river you've ever seen in the eastern United States looked different before Castoroides was gone. Not a little different. Fundamentally different. Modern beavers, the ones we have today, are already extraordinary ecosystem engineers. A single beaver dam raises the water table across surrounding land, creates wetlands where there were none, filters sediment, reduces flooding downstream, and generates habitat for dozens of species that couldn't exist otherwise. Ecologists call them a keystone species, meaning their presence holds an entire ecological structure together in a way that nothing else replicates. Remove them and the system doesn't just shrink, it reorganizes into something categorically different. Now scale that up to an animal 3 times the size. Castoroides dams, if it built them at all, and the anatomy suggests it did, would have been engineering projects of a completely different order. Larger impoundments, deeper pools. Wetland systems spread across areas that today are dry land, farmland, suburbs. The waterscape of pre-human North America was shaped in part by an animal we barely know existed, and when that animal disappeared, the continent's hydrology shifted in ways that are almost impossible to fully reconstruct now because we have no baseline that predates the loss. The rivers got faster, the wetlands shrank, the water table in certain regions dropped. And nobody noticed because there was nobody keeping records, and by the time anyone thought to ask the question, 10,000 years of change had buried the answer under everything that came after. This is the part of extinction stories that rarely gets told cleanly. It's not just the animal that disappears, it's the world the animal was building. Castoroides wasn't living in North America, it was partially constructing it. And we walked into that construction project, and somewhere in the chaos of a changing climate and a spreading human population, the architect vanished and took the blueprints with it. There's a movement today called rewilding that takes this idea seriously. The argument is that ecosystems missing their keystone species are running at a fraction of their ecological potential, and that reintroducing large animals, or in some cases engineering analogs for extinct ones, can restore functions that have been absent for millennia. Beavers are actually central to many rewilding projects in North America and Europe right now because the science on what they do to watersheds is overwhelming. But Castoroides is not coming back. Whatever it was building along those slow Midwestern rivers, whatever wetlands it maintained, whatever species depended on the world it made, that's gone in a way that is final. So the next time you're near a river in Ohio or Michigan or Kentucky, look at the water moving past you. It's moving through a landscape that was shaped by something enormous and now runs a little emptier than it used to. 10,000 years ago, a giant beaver was engineering that same water. And then we arrived, and the world changed, and it never changed back.